Hi, this is Remembering the Past with Corey Franklin, the show where we talk about people who died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. Tonight we're going to start out with Marcia Wallace, who died recently at the age of 70. I loved Marcia Wallace. What a great actress she was. Marcia's one of those people that your familiarity with depends on your age. Most people will know her as the cynical, sarcastic teacher Edna Krabappel, spelled Crabapple, from The Simpsons. Some of us loved her a generation before that as the cynical, sarcastic secretary for Bob Newhart in The Bob Newhart Show, as Carol Kester and then Carol Kester Bondurant when she married Larry Bondurant, the travel agent. Marcia's a nice Midwestern girl from Creston, Iowa. She went to Parsons, one of my favorite colleges, got the acting bug and moved to New York City to Greenwich Village where she poked around for a while, did some theater, and like a lot of itinerant actors, moonlighted as a substitute teacher in the Bronx. Merv Griffin saw her and he put her on his TV talk show as a semi-regular guest, but her real break was when William Paley, the big kahuna of CBS, saw her.
I was hired to do the Bob Newhart show after the pilot had been done by Mr. Paley, who was head of CBS. He'd seen me on the Merv Griffin show. So I was kind of forced on all of them, and they were very nice about it. And I just showed up one day and they said, okay, we've written in a secretary and this is her. I thought, well, they're going to find me out in about a week and I'll be back home by Tuesday. But I remember opening night, the first show, I got this huge laugh. Everybody was getting huge laughs. It was just, when I met Bob, actually the first time, my first memory of Bob, I saw him in an airport years ago when I was still in college, and some drunk had him cornered. And he, if I were him even then, I would have said, bye-bye. He stood there going, and never, he just won't be rude. He just won't be rude. One of the endless wonderful things you can say about him.
A couple of nice, polite Midwestern people. One of Bob Newhart's greatest talents is, like Jack Benny before him, he wasn't afraid of letting his co-stars get laughs. And the Carol Kester part was written for Marcia Wallace.
Carol Kester, Bob and Jerry's hard-working and trusty receptionist.
He's too perfect, you know? Yeah, who'd want a guy like that?
I'm Stan Connors.
And I'm right outside if anybody wants me.
You mean you really want to go out with me?
Yes, I do.
I think I'm beginning to lose respect for you.
There's a lot of talk about these sitcoms today, but let me tell you something. That Bob Newhart show in the mid-70s is in the mix for greatest sitcoms of all time. Anyway, Marcia Wallace's career might have ended right there. She was typecast to a certain extent, but she was great on these TV game shows. She had some minor television and theater parts, but nothing really came her way until she got the Simpsons part. And the Simpson writers knew what to do with Marcia Wallace as Edna Krabappel. Her trademark was that famous derisive ha laugh.
Well, that's not what I was going to say, but it's a good idea. Ha! Ha! It thinks it's people.
Now, I know everybody's eager to get back to class.
Ha! So today we all have to stay 2 extra hours to make up for the time we lost. Ha! Attention, teachers! We're on strike. Ha! Well, that's a lame excuse for an excuse. Ha!
And your laugh.
You mean ha?
Mm-hmm. Hey, does this mean that Mrs. Krabappel is a virgin too?
Ha! Spend it on something fun. Go wild. Ha! Right, Seymour?
Yes.
I am stinking. Well, there goes Christmas dinner.
Ha! It looks good, but I'm not going to celebrate till he's gaffed, gutted, and hanging in my trophy room. Ha!
I know a terrific tavern.
Ha! My ex-husband was a drunk.
Can I deliver that to the office for you?
Ha! I wasn't born yesterday.
Door's broken. Did a volcano erupt in Candyland? Because I just caught me a flying red hot.
Ha! Ah.
Where's your husband buried?
Probably between the hooters of a coat check girl in Shelbyville. Ha!
Are you dating this boy?
Right. I can't be around him because he's so delicious. Ha!
TV writer and blogger Ken Levine wrote a nice piece on Marcia Wallace. So sad to hear of the passing of Marcia Wallace. She was 70. Marcia and I became good friends after working together for 1 week. She starred in a pilot of ours in 1979. The project didn't go, but I remained friends with her ever since. What a brave, courageous, funny lady. Depending on your age, she is best known as Carol Kester, the receptionist on The Bob Newhart Show, or the voice of the schoolteacher Edna Krabappel on The Simpsons. I've never met anyone who could deal with adversity with as much good humor as Marcia, and she dealt with a series of them. Breast cancer, her husband dying, a fire in her house. How she did it, I'll never know. Every year, Marcia would send a Christmas card that included a 2-page letter detailing her past year. Boy, to read the way she handled one calamity after another, you didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I told her I both looked forward to and dreaded receiving her Christmas cards. A few years ago, Marcia wrote her autobiography. I recommend it. Typical Marcia. Her teenage son announced that he wanted to be an actor. Marcia said, "Oh, really? You want to be an actor? Act like you like me." One of the weirdest occurrences of my life involved Marcia. A number of years ago, I was in the Nashville airport getting ready to fly back home to Los Angeles. Over the PA, they paged Bob Hartley. That was Bob Newhart's name on the Bob Newhart Show. That struck me as kind of odd, and then 5 minutes later, Marcia Wallace walks by. She was on her book tour. We both hummed the Twilight Zone theme. She weathered career ups and downs like she weathered everything else, with grace and perspective. I was so thrilled that she landed the Simpsons gig. If anyone deserved good things in their life, it was Marcia. I hope there's a heaven because she was made for that place. Talk about perfect casting. And if there is an afterlife, Marcia, could you please still keep those Christmas cards coming? And maybe pop up in an airport? With Marcia, anything is possible. We're going to move on now to William Harrison, who died at the age of 79. He was the author who wrote Rollerball Mysteries, the book that the 1975 movie Rollerball was based on. It's a classic of a dystopic future and corporate control. A lot of those movies were made in the 70s and 80s, and that was one of the first ones. The 2002 remake was terrible. The two great performances in the 75 version were by John Houseman and James Caan.
Jonathan E., that's the name. Houston players come and go, but the champion plays on. You know how the game serves us. It has a definite social purpose. Nations are bankrupt, gone, no poverty, no sickness. Man has accomplished what he'd always craved. Corporate society was an inevitable destiny, a good life, a centuries-old dream.
You better do as you're told, Jonathan. That's all I have to say.
Don't be here when I come back.
You won't be back, Johnny Book.
No player is greater than the game itself. It's not a game a man is supposed to grow strong in, Jonathan.
You still don't understand why I came here.
You're the only person I ever wanted. Wanted you on my side. That's all.
The books you wrote are classified and have been transcribed and summarized.
Who summarized it?
Zero, of course. He's the world's brain.
Does it answer you?
Well, it speaks.
I'd like some information about corporate decisions, how they're made and who makes them.
They're afraid of you, Jonathan. All the way to the top.
The game was created to demonstrate the futility of individual effort. Let the game do its work.
Game! This wasn't meant to be a game!
By the way, you watch that movie and you see how Harrison foreshadowed the creation of Google 25 years later. We're going to move on now to Augusto Odone, who died at the age of 80, and he was the real-life father of Lorenzo in Lorenzo's Oil. The story also became a movie, the 1992 classic with Nick Nolte and Susan Sarandon, about a father and mother who try and save their child who suffers from adrenal leukodystrophy by creating a new oil out of cooking oils and battle the medical establishment. It's a sort of a real-life story. They took some liberties. The oil isn't a cure, it's a sort of a preventive type of thing. The medical establishment wasn't completely against them. Many people cooperated with them, but it made for a very good movie, except for Nick Nolte's Italian accent. He did a good job otherwise.
I want to take Lorenzo off the diet. He's been eating cardboard for 19 weeks, and what's it getting us?
And feed him what?
Well, normal foods, things a child likes.
Full of the long-chain fats that we know destroy his myelin.
On the diet, his blood fats are still rising.
Yes, I know, McKay.
Well, it doesn't make any sense.
I know, but we don't know enough. We don't know enough. We don't know it clearly enough. Here, McKay, let me show you something. I see the kitchen sink. All right. Now, here is the tap. And here's the sink basin and the plug hole, right? Very long-chain saturated fats are introduced by what we eat, all right?
Yes.
Now, also produced by the body or manufactured by the body, these very same fats.
Biosynthesis.
Biosynthesis, right. All right. Now, normally, they are not harmful because this enzyme eliminates the excess. But in Lorenzo, This enzyme is defective from genetics. His blood hole is blocked. Now, we know that very long-chain saturated fats are made up of carbon atoms, C2, 4, 6, 8, all the way up the chain, right? In Lorenzo, is saturated C24 and C26 rise to 4 times the normal levels. Here's where we have a little paradox, a mystery. Why, when we reduce the dietary intake of saturated fats, does the level in our sink, which we would expect to go down, go up?
So, logically, we should take him off the diet.
Logically, we should not. Because let's not do what the doctors did. Let's not act without knowing why. Why? When we turn off this tap, does a level in our sink rise?
I married a plumber.
Michaela, you married a man with a simple mind who asks simple questions. That's all.
I'm going to close tonight with Lou Reed, who died at the age of 70. Nice Jewish boy born in Brooklyn. He moved to Greenwich Village, and he became a rock and roller. He wasn't your classical rock and roller, but the New Yorkers loved him. I think some of the obituaries on him were a little overblown. I don't think he was as influential as Dylan or the Beatles, but he attracted Andy Warhol's notice with the Velvet Underground, and he did influence the future generations of rock and roll. Here's PBS with a little bit on Lou Reed.
It began with the band The Velvet Underground and his collaborations with artist Andy Warhol, and moved into decades of solo, often highly experimental work. Author and music critic Anthony DeCurtis of Rolling Stone magazine is here to help fill in the picture and take us back to the early years to explain how a man who really never had enormous commercial success as a pop or rock star nonetheless is considered so influential. What did he bring to the music?
Around the time of the first Velvet Underground album called The Velvet Underground and Nico, which was 1966, 67, there was the flower power and psychedelia, all of this kind of utopian thinking, whereas the Velvet Underground really went underground. They were documenting the kind of New York demimonde of sexual adventurism and drug use, and one of the classic songs from that period of the Velvet Underground was called Heroin. Another was called I'm Waiting for My Man, about going up to Harlem to score drugs. So there was a sense in which they were putting a vision on record that was maybe the kind of thing that you would read about in a William Burroughs novel or a Nelson Algren novel. There was a sense in which, that was Lou Reed's project. He saw himself in literary terms.
One important influence for him was not musical, but literary, was the poet Delmore Schwartz.
He studied with Delmore Schwartz at Syracuse University. From Delmore Schwartz, he learned a kind of emotionality, really, and a willingness to take risks. There's a great Delmore Schwartz collection called In Dreams Begin Responsibilities. Lou Reed took that seriously in terms of his own vision for himself as an artist. There would be no boundaries. I think that was his idea.
How did his ideas and his music spread out? How did it influence what happened to rock and roll?
Well, there's a very famous quote by a musician and producer named Brian Eno, who once said, well, only 30,000 people bought the first Velvet Underground album, but every one of those people formed a band. And that really gets at the impact that the Velvet Underground had. There was a sense in which, immediately, like Iggy Pop and David Bowie, a little bit later, Patti Smith and television and Talking Heads, a little later than that, U2 and REM, a little bit later than that, Pearl Jam and Nirvana, down to the current day of bands like Arcade Fire and The National and Grizzly Bear, all owe a debt to Lou Reed. The Velvet Underground was the invention of underground rock and alternative rock, and any band that didn't set out immediately to just reproduce whatever was on the top 40 owes a debt to Lou Reed. I think Lou Reed would have loved to have hit records. He wasn't better than that, but he wanted to make music on his own terms. And all of those experiments and the controversies, disappointments, he saw as part of the game. And he took his own work, he had no doubt about its quality and its lasting significance. And that's how he carried himself, and that's the way he went into the studio and went on stage to present a vision that he felt at that moment, regardless of what anybody else thought about it, is the kind of inspiration that he gave to other bands.
You gotta love those pretentious rock critics, the demi-monde. Anyway, I'm gonna close on that note. I want to thank my producer, Sid Taps. Well, the report said Lou Reed wasn't a great commercial success, but in the early 70s he had one hit. It was about some characters from his days with Andy Warhol, and it got banned from some radio stations for its risque lyrics, but it's a pretty good song, and it's called A Walk on the Wild Side.
Little Joe never once gave it away. Everybody had to pay and pay. A hustle here and a hustle there. New York City's the place where they said he'd be. Take a walk on the wild side. I said, hey Joe, take a walk on the wild side.
I'm an acquired taste.